What's up and welcome back. Thanks for subscribing. I assume you're a subscriber because why wouldn't you be? So thanks for clicking on this video. And I'm a blind film critic, but I don't do enough lists. Somebody suggested I should do more lists, and I want to talk about film because I love film, and I talk a lot about audio description, but this is top 5. It's a new thing I'm doing where I'm talking about whenever I have a film with an actor or actress that I've seen a lot of their films, I want to talk about their top 5 roles. So this is not necessarily the quality of the films, but necessarily the roles in which I think they stood out the most. So today we're going to talk about Diane Keaton, who I just saw Book Club 2, the next chapter. That was the 29th film of Diane Keaton's that I've seen. It's obviously not her entire filmography, but I'd say 29 is pretty strong. So I feel pretty good about being able to come up with a top 5 for her. These are roles, so I'm not going to necessarily give her credit for doing the same role in every sequel. So for example, obviously I'm going to mention The Godfather. I'm just not going to give it 3 slots. So once she created that role, she gets credit for that role. You know, it's not necessarily the same thing. Anyway, so let's get started. So clocking in at number 5 is, I'm going to give her Father of the Bride. I think it's a role that worked really well for her. She plays really well off of Steve Martin. It's a film that has... I honestly think she's the best person who's been in this role. I saw the original and the Andy Garcia remake. This is still my favorite version of the franchise and of this role. So this and part 2, and if you saw part 3, which was sort of like a YouTube thing, yes. Yeah, it's great. It's very Diane Keaton of her, though. She does very much have a type, which you're going to see a lot of in this list, I'm going to be honest. So coming up next on the list is The First Wives Club. This is a role where she gets her heart broken and decides to do something about it. And it was a delightful movie in the mid-90s. It was back when... it's funny how we were making movies for women of a certain age back in the 90s, and Diane Keaton was already starring in them, and she's still starring in them. She's been doing films of this genre that have been aimed at adults for a while. And she's excelled in these films. And if anything, she's honed a certain craft, that certain Diane Keaton style in these roles. And you see it also in First Wives Club. Coming up with number 3 on the list is Something's Gotta Give, which is really one of my favorite films of all time. I really enjoy this film. I think it's a combination of putting Diane Keaton with Jack Nicholson, 2 people who are both really good and they play off of each other so well. And again, she plays a playwright, kind of neurotic playwright. And it's a lot of what she's been working on. She's been honing this character and this craft for this whole time, but it works really well, and Something's Gotta Give. Number 2, I'm going to drop Annie Hall. I know you probably thought I was going to give this number 1 because it's kind of what she's known for, but I'm not, because Annie Hall was the beginning of the other movies. It was the beginning of Diane Keaton being Diane Keaton. And Diane Keaton got really comfortable playing Diane Keaton, playing Annie Hall, and basically everything else afterwards. You know, there's a certain way that she dresses, there's a certain way that she looks, and she wears her hair. There's a certain speech pattern that she has with all of her roles. It's just, there's not necessarily that there's anything wrong with that. There are plenty of actors and actresses that have a certain, they understand their craft, and it works really well for them, and they have like a sweet spot. And they take that sweet spot and they just put it into other films. And sometimes it works, and then sometimes it doesn't. Diane Keaton has been in plenty of films where that thing has not worked because the film didn't work, because her chemistry with her characters didn't work, whatever it is. For many reasons, she does have films on her resume that are bad films, but I'm not here to rain on her parade. However, it did kind of start with Annie Hall and the praise that she got for that role, and she was like, I could do this for the rest of my life. And she kind of did. So, what did I put at number one? Well, first I want to give honorable mention. There was a film that I really wanted to put on my list also, but if I'm being honest, I don't think she's not really the reason I remember the film, but I remember it being a nice sort of takeaway for her. Like a nice sort of, I'm not going to be myself. And that's Marvin's Room. If you haven't seen Marvin's Room, it came out in the mid-90s. It's Meryl Streep, Diane Keaton, and Leonardo DiCaprio. And I believe Robert De Niro's in this. And it is actually a lot better than it has really any right to be, considering I think it's been lost to time and forgotten. But it is dramatic. And it gives Diane Keaton sort of an opportunity to... She can't just rely on her quirky charm in the film. But it is kind of a forgettable film, forgettable role, and she wasn't the lead. Depending on how you feel about that film, it's either Meryl Streep or Leonardo DiCaprio that's the lead. So, depending on the perspective that you take. But my number one choice for her is, yes, The Godfather. Yeah. It's, you know why? Because Kay is so unlike everything else she's played. There's a little bit of Diane Keaton in there, but it also forces her, like, she can't just do it. She can't just kind of rattle on. She can't do her quirky dressing. She has to dress a certain way. She has to match the themes. It's her acting outside of her comfort zone. And while she's probably one of the least memorable aspects of The Godfather, that's because The Godfather is such a tremendous trilogy that it's usually not... Diane Keaton is usually not the first thing you think of, but what you do see in the film is you see an actress that is really trying to stretch herself dramatically, something that she rarely did. I know that she's done it a couple of other times in films that I just haven't been able to see, like Reds. But for me, the true worth of Diane Keaton comes when she shows, listen, I don't need to do that. I'm really good at this other thing, but I'm going to step over here and do this for a minute and just show you that I have the potential to do this, should I choose to do it. So, she showed a little bit of that in Marvin's Room, but I thought the best representation of that is The Godfather. However, if we're being honest, the thing we know Diane Keaton most for are romantic comedies. So yeah, that's why like 4 of the slots are romantic comedies, because she's kind of a queen of romantic comedies. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I hope you enjoyed my list. Let me know what your favorite Diane Keaton role is. These are roles, not necessarily films. I probably would have ranked that a little bit differently if those were just films. So, I'll be back the next time I review a film with an actor or actress who has a depth of catalog. Until then, I'll see you guys on the other side.